Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is Friday, the 3rd of September 2021. And these are the stories that we'll be discussing during the course of the show. Today we are going to be India-centric because there are two very important issues that concern our not-so-friendly country. The first is, of course, Ali Gilani Saab, the veteran Kashmiri Hurriyat leader who was laid to rest. But it was the way in which he was laid to rest that makes it very controversial. The family members or the other Kashmiris were not allowed to participate in his funeral prayers. Those prayers were, of course, that funeral process was held very early in the morning, around 4 a.m. And, of course, a curfew was imposed in the whole area to prevent the people to attend the funeral prayers of the veteran Kashmiri Hurriyat leader. At the same time, as far as Pakistan is concerned, there have been funeral prayers in absentia today, also after the Jummah prayers at the Faisal Mosque in Islamabad. There were funeral prayers. At other places also there were funeral prayers. And, of course, 3 days of mourning in Azad, Jammu and Kashmir. Our second segment that is also related to what is happening in our not-so-friendly neighbor India is what and the way the minorities are being treated there, especially the Muslims. There are so many incidents that have come to the limelight as far as the Muslims that live there in India are concerned. There is no respect for the minorities in India, especially since the Modi government took power. This is going to be our second segment. Then we'll be talking about Paralympian Haider Ali. Very good news coming from the Pakistani front. Paralympian Haider Ali, who has made the country proud. He has won the first ever gold medal for Pakistan in the Paralympics with a top podium finish in the discus throw event at the 2020 Tokyo event, and he threw a 55.26 meters throw in his 5th attempt out of the total 6 and made not only our country proud but also all the disabled people proud across the world. Now we will also talk about 3 differently abled people, women in this case, and that is Tanzila Khan, Zargoona, Wadood and Afshan Afridi, who have gone to Egypt on their own. And these women are wheelchair bound, but nevertheless their first solo trip to Egypt was a journey of a lifetime. And they have also talked about the obstacles that they have overcome in order to be independent, in order to be women of their own means, in order to do things on their own despite being differently abled. Let's begin with our first segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns Mr. Ali Gilani, who was laid to rest under very controversial circumstances. He was 92 years of age, and he was a veteran Kashmiri Hurriyat leader. More in the following report.
The custodial death of iconic Kashmiri leader Syed Ali Gilani not only exposed the fascist despotism of saffron terrorist Indian regime, but also inflicted deadly blow to Indian imperial delusions, as Gilani's death didn't mark end of indigenous freedom movement of Kashmir. Being the face of resistance against an autocratic tyrant regime, the sad demise of veteran Hurriyat leader didn't change the Kashmiris' quest for right of self-determination. The besieged burial of the popular resistance leader amid crippling security clampdown exhibits escalating democratic decline of Indian regime masquerading as democracy. Indian government was baffled over the prospects of lost rights of the revered Kashmiri leader turning into mass uprisings against the imperial regime. The chaotic burial of Gilani marked Indian democracy's funeral as well, because the cherished leader continues to inspire next generation of Kashmiri youth for carrying freedom movement against India. The conduct of Indian Hindu nationalist regime regarding last rites of resistance icon is not only instance which expose simmering humanitarian quandary in Indian administrative regions. According to BBC report, anti-Muslim violence escalated since 2014 under Hindu nationalist government of Prime Minister Modi, and adding insult to injury, BJP government hardly ever condemns such incidents as Hindu mobs routinely target the largest minority. The overwhelming violence against minorities in India, along with gross violations of human rights in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, depict that India is a regional pariah state which deserves to be castigated by international community for perpetrating state-sponsored terrorism.
Now, to talk more about these incidents that have emanated from across the border, we've been joined by 2 guests. One joins us in the studio, the other is online. Our guest in the studio is Rana Ather Javed Saab. He is the DG Pakistan House as well as a security analyst. And our second guest who joins us online is Mr. Ali Sarwar Naqvi. He is a former ambassador. Thank you very much to the both of you to have joined us. Let's begin with you, Rana Ather Javed Saab. Syed Ali Gilani, a name to reckon with as far as Kashmiri movement is concerned, concerning the right to self-determination is concerned. A lot of fear inside the Indian government as far as this veteran Kashmiri Hurriyat leader is. Even at the age of 91, till he passed away at the age of 92, he was considered a threat to India. Why was that so? Wasn't he talking about working towards a genuine right of the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir?
Well, that is exactly the precise reason, Umar, that he was talking about this right to self-determination, and he was actually asking to serve the international law, United Nations resolution. He didn't ask any out-of-box solution. And the important thing is that, this person, if we look into his struggle since he was a teenager against occupation of any kind, again, imperialistic occupation, and subsequently of Indian, he remained steadfast and consistent. The consistency with which he demonstrated the leadership, like the famous slogan, which became actually now literally a proverb in the dictionary of international conflict, that hum Pakistani hai, Pakistan hamara hai. And he was fragile. For the past 1 year, he was imprisoned. And beyond that, the brutality of Indian military also demonstrated that they have actually, I have to say that they have a less human being, that no human being in the world would want their family not to be present and bury the
under
person.
such circumstances,
Under
and
the
so early in the
circumstances.
morning, not
So
let other people mourn his death in the proper
it's
manner.
not only the threat, he became symbol of the only symbol at the moment, international, attention was on him, has been on him. And he never negotiated, he never retreated from his stance. India tried very hard to implicate his sons, his family, his son-in-law, you name it. There were countless examples of him being beaten up and confronted every time he come out for even prayer, or even saying Assalamu alaikum to the crowd, even just say hello to the crowd. They were so afraid. I think this is also, I would say, although he passed away, the success, that his success, that one of the biggest so-called power, regional power, not global power in that way, a country which claims to have all kind of weapons, 10,000, 1 million kind soldiers, this 192 years old, fragile person, ill, on that bed. This shows that if this current indigenous movement continued, I think it would be very, very difficult for India to survive. It's not about that what kind of lineage leadership has been there. Of course, they always try to create problems within the Hurriyat, APHC there and also here, but they won't be successful. It is not about, it was about one person as a leader, but the movement, the idea behind the resistance lives. It will live until these are brothers and sisters there. They will get rid of illegal Indian occupation. And I can assure you this was really captured by many neutral journalists in the world. Although they minced their word, because India tries to take also diplomatic revenge if it is, this is what India does, that if someone wants to talk about, like in reality, what is the situation in India, and within their status of so-called now, the president of the even UNSC, it's the biggest irony of fate that one of the biggest violator of international human rights and illegal occupation of millions of Kashmiris still manages to get away with what she does. And I think this is the point of departure basically for much more intense and much more active and vibrant movement of Kashmiri youth. And you would see in the coming days and months and years that Indians will face, and you will taste the medicine of their own medicine. What they have done here, there
would be repercussions.
Yeah, they could have been more magnanimous. They would have allowed them to bury according to the way They wanted to be buried. He wanted to be buried according to his will in Martyrs, graveyard, and he was refused to bury in Hyderpur, very close to his home.
Of course. And this is not the place where he wanted to be
They
buried.
wanted to bury it. So the idea was, of course, and is that there must not be an attraction of people should not come, but they will come. They will come out. India cannot hold all these millions of people
you
forever.
You cannot suppress people. You cannot suppress a movement for a longer time. People will revolt at what time they will revolt.
So the draconian laws and draconian actions, one way or the other, will be answered by the Kashmiris there.
All right. Ali Sarwar Naqvi Sahab also joins us online. He's a former ambassador. Naqvi Sahab, thank you very much to have joined us. Naqvi Sahab, what kind of diplomatic move or a non-diplomatic move or a suppressive move has been put forward by India, especially in the wake of the death of Sayyid Ali Gilani Sahab? Why aren't people in Kashmir allowed to go and attend the funeral prayers? Why is there such a hush-hush in burying Mr. Ali Gilani at 4 in the morning? Gilani Sahab, can you hear us? Okay. Ali Sarwar Naqvi Sahab can't hear us properly, so as soon as he does come online, we'll go back to him. Rana Ather Javed Sahab, when we talk of the Kashmiri movement, we know that it has gained momentum since 2016, since Burhan Wani, of course, was martyred. And then, but when we talk of Sayyid Ali Gilani Sahab, since the 1960s, his work, his movement, his zeal for the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir has been going on for their right to self-determination. Do you feel the flame that he kindled will continue to burn brighter even if after his passing away?
Yeah, I think it will, because we have seen different phases, transformation of the movement. Because the movement transformed, for example, from 60 to 70 was quite at the initial stage, but then it was intensified in 80s and in 90s. Then there was a lull period because of the different international circumstances in which the so-called international community basically pressured them or also trained Indian soldiers and others to implement more strict laws. So I would say personally, to be honest, it will continue. And one of the reasons it will continue that it is an indigenous movement which may have leadership of experienced or seasoned people or may have the young leadership. But as I said, the resistance against illegal occupation of India cannot just vanish because, as I said, they have gone through the different phases.
Of course.
And I think it is a time for international community to return to their senses, at least to understand and address the laws they have agreed to.
All right. A loss indeed for the people of Indian illegally occupied Kashmir and also for the Muslims across the world, because this was what he was, Sayyid Ali Gilani, a symbol for the rights of the people, of the minorities, of the Muslims of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Ali Sarwar Naqvi Sahab joins us online, former ambassador. Naqvi Sahab, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yeah.
All right. Ali Sarwar Naqvi Sahab, Sayyid Ali Gilani Sahab had been more or less, let's put the word forward, a thorn in India's side since the early 1960s. Do you feel the work that he did during all these decades for the right to self-determination of the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, this work will continue unabated even after his passing away?
Yes, of course. You see, Sayyid Ali Gilani Sahab, the late Ali Gilani Sahab was a patriot, was a committed freedom fighter. And he was a bold and totally fearless advocate of his views. He would stand for his views and commitments no matter what the risks and dangers may be. That is why he courted arrest many times. He went to jail. He was often under house arrest, and even now he was under kind of surveillance. So he devoted his life to fighting for his cause. for championing his great commitment to the freedom of Kashmir. And he felt that in that context, Pakistan was a brotherly
All right,
country.
we'll continue with this show, but after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and in our show Newsroom today we're talking about the plight of Muslims, whether it be in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, for whom Sayyid Ali Gilani was like a flame, like a bright light that was extinguished because of his passing away. Nevertheless, he leaves behind a legacy of such leaders that will continue to shine bright as far as this movement for self-determination of the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. Rana Javed Saab, Muslims in India, whether it be in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir or other parts of India, are not safe, do not feel safe, no longer feel safe. A couple of decades back, the situation was different. Now, in this second term of Narendra Modi, things have taken a complete 360-degree turn. Why is that so? Is this deliberate because of the RSS agenda, Modi agenda, BJP agenda, or is there something more to it?
I think, to be honest, the hate syndrome which BJP is suffering from, and also the kind of leadership since 2014 in place. I mean, of course, it's an open secret that Narendra Modi and his alike, they were involved in from Babri Mosque to all the way. And they were also, of course, their own disciple was involved in killing the founder of India, Mahatma Gandhi. So their history is there of bloodshed and especially brutality against minorities, and anyone opposes their ideology. There is a recent report published a few days back on BBC, actually. The website is available if you type on that. And amazingly, they mentioned that not only this is increased, but the way they are doing it, they want to have they have their program of a reverse program up, like they call it Ghar Wapsi program. They want to reconvert those who were converted hundreds of years ago from Hindus to Muslims. They want to convert them back, and if they refuse to be converted, they will attack them. And when we say Muslims, I think, of course, Muslims are under fire, no doubt, in India. But Umar, if you look at the Dalits and others, I mean, there were incidents, a few, as I said in the report, mentioned as well, that the Dalit girl was raped many times and then she was killed, and those who were opposing came in a picture and the police arrested them instead.
That is racism. That is something that has been prominent in India since centuries.
Yes, but for this especially, for this our subject today, is I think it is, we have to understand that the Muslims in India, they are on the back foot since the partition of Pakistan. Those who moved here, they felt they have independent homeland. Those who remained back, they thought that it would be a great country because we lived here for hundreds of years.
It would be a democratic country where they would be given their due rights.
And of course, there were incidents against Sikhs as well, but especially the Muslims are being targeted now because of their religion, A. B, they want to ensure that Muslims who are more than 200 million, they remain backward in all fields, in education, I mean, they were not given proper places in armed forces, in police. I mean, one or two examples are not countable.
Exactly.
But because that's what they do, that 1-2 prominent Muslims are being installed in one place. Then they are also using this mantra of radicalization to carry out a campaign of ethnic cleansing, because they have these laws inside the country which they use in illegally Indian occupied Kashmir, and they are implementing those laws within India in the mainland. That is technically illegal against their own laws. So I would say to you that for Muslims, there has to be a voice coming from OIC. I know that OIC has displayed a kind of more timid response to India because of certain, they do at times voice their concerns, but I think there is a need in this hour and the coming, I'm not sure, but what happens in the change of the government, for example, in Afghanistan, the current government, because what we are watching Indian TV is an extreme propaganda against Pakistan, against Muslims, and they are looking Muslims as their enemy. I think only one consequence of this would hurt India more than anything. I know the Muslims are being hurt, but that consequences relate to integration of India. Because if 200 million people are being targeted because of their religion, there will be a time that these Muslims will respond to the brutality. That is what I said in my previous conversation, that the idea to resist the brutality and this imperialistic behavior, and also the behavior like the saffron, we call it, that the way...
But this imperialist behavior, Rana Sahab, that you talk about, isn't this too much of a lot of centuries behind in this 21st century? When the world knows and moves at a certain pace, when the West understands the perspectives of what is wrong and what is right, why is there not as much of a hue and cry of what is happening in India, in, for example, the United Nations, in, for example, the United States, in, for example, the European Union? We know there have been resolutions there as far as what is happening in India and in the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. But is resolutions merely that enough, or do you feel that action needs to be done before it's too late?
I think, to be honest, resolutions are just a basis at the moment. They are of no use right now, right? But what it needs to be done is an action in a way in which we should make complete sustainable awareness campaign against those businesses which are preferring businesses over humanity, because the preference order is wrong. I mean, had this something happened, if you remember what happened in Bosnia, even the United States was helping Bosnian Muslims because they knew in the heart of Europe, any conflict could just take entire Europe, engulf entire Europe into conflict. So they protected that part. Since India is a specialist in hiding and covering up its crimes against humanity, the world somehow has failed to balance that the humanity has to be in order to be number one, and then the businesses come. You see, all the time, if you remember, they had this mantra of child labor, and they would prevent any businesses. Teenagers are working, they would stop it. In India, it's quite opposite. In India, everything illegal or whatever India does is acceptable because, in my view, because of the business interest, international business interest. And also the way Indians are being placed in international organization and also in other countries' diplomatic corps and their parliaments and their think tanks. They have this a systematic way of stream of lobbying and advocacy. Our part is quite different. You know, it is very difficult for Pakistan to cut through this all bureaucratic channel and international resistance against Pakistan. Only thing can really work out that a 5 to 10 years plan of a sustainable campaign against those businesses, not boycotting them, because boycotting a business means you are giving them in plate provision to completely establish autocracy over India, or India an autocracy over businesses. It is better to create awareness that, look, these are incidents, they should be documented, presented, and those who manufacture in different countries must be conveyed that the violator of international human rights and rights of minorities, especially Muslims within India, must be prevented to become. So at every international forum, if you keep presenting, in my view, it looks that it's not working, but it does work. Look, the BBC and other reports, I said it in my previous, I think, a few talks back, that we were discussing that it was very rare that they would criticize India, the BJP.
But now a lot of such organizations are openly talking about these atrocities.
RSS is being discussed as, you know, their documentaries were as in a seriously extremist Hindu extremist organization, which is not maligning Hindu as a religion, which is also maligning actually international law, and trying to create an India which will remain only Hindu India, Hindustan.
But this is what they want. This is what the RSS wants.
Of course, which they want, they may get it. I mean, within India, there may be a disintegration by the end of the day. If you press these 200 million Muslims and the Sikhs and the Dalits and all others, obviously the result, as I said, the direct consequences will be on Indian society.
Final comment from you, Rana Sahab. I will quote something that was also put in the BBC report, and they said, today hate has gone mainstream. It is cool to go attack Muslims. The hate mongers are also rewarded for their actions. This is a trend that has been emanating in India, especially since 2014. Pakistan has been talking about it. It has presented different dossiers on it. We have talked about it at the United Nations General Assembly as well, and other fora. You've talked about the role of the OIC, we've talked about the role of the EU and the United Nations. What more can we do?
I think, to be honest, there must be a special group of Muslim scholars and journalists and strategists whose job should be only job should be to expose India, document them day in, day out, and completely disseminate to international media and publish reports, monographs, books, whatever you can. I mean, if you can do it, this 5-year plan to say that these are our goals we want to achieve, target Indian businesses who are sponsoring these terrorists as well, because the money they get to conduct all these activities and bribe the police and get away comes from the businessman. Their sponsors not only the state, but also the industries. I mean, there are very big industries, those who support them. They may be afraid of sort of retribution. There can be one argument that they are modern, but they are afraid of being retributed by these Hindu mob, these RSS goons, I would say. So I think there is a need on this part that if you really want to do, besides what's happening, and proactive. So there must be
there needs to be more of a proactive engagement on different fora.
Yeah, and it should be not only theoretical and intellectual discourse. It has to be involved mobilization on the ground. Because mobilization will complement what is the idea, theory behind the campaign.
All right. Thank you very much, Rana Ather, Javed Sahab, DG Pakistan House and Security Analyst, to have talked about our not so friendly neighbor, as I said in the very beginning, and the different incidents that it is involved in, and the world is looking at it without batting an eyelid. Thank you very much, sir. Let's go to our last stories, two stories, and of course they are more positive than the first two that we've talked about. The first is of course Haider Ali, who has bagged the first ever Paralympic gold for Pakistan. He threw a 55.26 meters in discus throw and won the F37 event at Tokyo. And of course it's a matter of pride for Pakistan, and he talked about the different hurdles he had to go through to achieve this stardom and this name for Pakistan that he has. And he has changed his whole course from a long jump to the discus throw, and it has gone in his favor as he now becomes a symbol of pride for Pakistan, especially as a differently able person and as somebody who has not bowed down to any opposition, to any pressure, and has achieved what he wanted to. Proof of it is this medal that he has achieved. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we would finally like to go to these three women, these three differently abled women from three different provinces of Pakistan, and that is Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, that is Balochistan and Punjab, who got together, got to know each other, working in different fields. Nevertheless, being differently able does pose a lot of challenge to any person, whether you are a woman or a man, but especially to women in any society. But they have overcome these challenges. They are working women, and two of them had already gone on single expeditions to other countries such as Turkey. Nevertheless, this is the first time that the three of them got together and decided to go on a trip to Egypt. They say there was a certain connection with the country that they wanted to explore, and this is what these three women did, and they have proven the fact that where there's a will, there's always a way, and you should never feel oppressed or suppressed despite the circumstances. Always try to fight back and always try to achieve whatever you want to. There's always a way. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. It's also the weekend, so we wish you a great weekend. We'll see you inshallah on Monday. Nevertheless, before we go away, I always say that at the end of the show, get yourselves vaccinated, follow the SOPs, and make Pakistan a stronger country. a pandemic-free country to live in. Allah Hafiz.